Hi everyone, I'm Kennan, and today we're talking about the 5 most insane off-road vehicles we've sold on Cars and Bids. Now, before I get going, I realize you might be thinking, Kennan, you like high-end, high-performance on-road vehicles. Why are you talking about off-road vehicles? And the truth is, well, I love these too. A couple of years ago, I spent a month in Southern Africa with my friend Jeff and his family driving around in a 70 series Land Cruiser, and I had a blast. I drove through water up to the windshield in it. I drove over a lot of soft sand, and basically we traversed most of Botswana and some of Zimbabwe in that truck as well. And I fell in love with the capability of serious off-road vehicles. But today we're focusing on the really insane stuff. And with that, let's get started. Before we get going though, surprise, surprise, this Defender is currently for sale, being auctioned live on Cars and Bids with no reserve. This Defender benefits from some great upgrades, including a left-hand drive conversion, an upgraded interior, and details like these con wheels. It also benefits from a full frame-off restoration, but more important than that is what lies under the hood, as this Defender has a 6.2-liter LS3 V8 making about 450 horsepower, and it's mated to an automatic transmission, exactly what you want in your Defender. This is a very nice build, and as a reminder, it's being offered with no reserve, meaning it finds a new home on Cars and Bids. So after you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below where you can head to the live auction of this Defender where you can bid on it and buy it with no reserve, only on Cars and Bids. The first vehicle I want to talk about is this 2000 Hummer H1, a civilian version. But unlike a lot of other Hummers, which are really capable off-road, this one looks particularly insane because it has a camper grafted to it. It has a Callan camper that sits on the bed of this Hummer, and well, it just looks ridiculous, but it's incredibly capable. In addition to all of the Hummer's off-road capabilities, you also have a very well-sorted living situation in that you have a queen mattress, you have access to fresh water, you have a stove, you have fold-out tables, you have everything you need to go really far off-road, and of course, again, it's built on the back of an already very capable off-road vehicle. I mentioned that this is a civilian version because, of course, there's a military version of the Hummer as well, known as the Humvee, which actually was spelled HMMWV, which stood for High Mobility Multi-Purpose Wheeled Vehicle. And it was produced by AM General starting in the mid-1980s and is still produced today for military applications. But at the time, in the early 90s, they only made those cars for military purposes. You couldn't buy one if you were a civilian until Arnold Schwarzenegger, for some reason in Oregon of all places, saw a column of them driving around and said, I have to have one of those. And so he personally lobbied AM General for years to build a civilian version, and his dream came true, and he got to have his famed Hummer, and he really catapulted it into the public's consciousness and of course made the H1 a popular vehicle among off-road enthusiasts. As I mentioned, this one is the civilian version, but it carried over a lot of great equipment from the military version, including portable axles and a central tire inflation system. It was also powered by a Detroit diesel V8, which produced 195 horsepower and 430 foot-pounds of torque, but none of that really matters because this thing just looks crazy. Imagine you're out in the desert in your Wrangler or your Taco just messing around, and all of a sudden you see streaming across the horizon is a Hummer that looks like it's carrying a camper on its back, like it's pulling a friend off the battlefield. It just looks ridiculous. And although I know it's really capable and it offers a lot of great amenities for you to go really far away and stay there, well, it just stood out in my mind as one of the craziest off-road vehicles we've ever sold. Sticking with the theme of America, the next truck I want to talk about is a Ford Bronco. Now, the modern Ford Bronco is an incredibly capable off-roader in its own right in totally stock form, but this particular one was not stock, as this Bronco was modified by Apocalypse Manufacturing, and they gave it their Dark Horse 6x6 conversion. That's right, 6 wheels and 6-wheel drive, which is totally bonkers. Now, in addition to giving it a 6-wheel drive system, that meant that they had to modify a lot of other aspects of the truck, including lengthening the chassis from 193 inches to 225 and upgrading a lot of components so that it could handle having, well, 6 wheels. It also featured a lot of obligatory modifications like a 4-inch suspension lift, the Smittybilt winch, and an ECU tune which brought horsepower up to 400 wheel horsepower. How you measure 6 wheel horsepower, what dyno you use for that, I have no idea. But regardless, this thing was just crazy. And it sold pretty well on Cars and Bids earlier this year for $84,000. Solid money for what is a ridiculous looking truck. And although maybe nobody will use this thing off-road as it's on the more expensive side, it's crazy looking. And even if you just take it to your local Cars and Coffee, you win on-road or off-road with that particular truck. And speaking of 6-wheeled vehicles, the next one I want to talk about is without question my favorite 6-wheeled contraption we've ever sold on Cars and Bids. And that is this 2015 Mercedes-Benz G63 6x6 conversion. Now, Mercedes-Benz famously sells a 6-wheeled version of the G-Wagen, but they cost like $1 million. And the owner of this one didn't want to shell that out, reasonably so. And so he very faithfully recreated a 6x6, and it retains a lot of the same equipment that you find in a rear one. It has triple lockers, 6-wheel drive obviously, and it has portal axles giving you that extra ground clearance you need off-road. It also still features the Mercedes-Benz luxuries that you would expect: heated and ventilated seats, a Harman Kardon sound system, carbon fiber trim, and the seller added some really interesting stuff to it to add a slightly more luxurious feel, and that included a Starlight headliner for that upper crust image. It also retained its M157 5.5 liter twin turbocharged V8 producing 536 horsepower and 560 foot-pounds of torque. Plenty of power even in a G-Wagen with 6 wheels. But the best part of all of it was that this truck didn't cost $1 million. It sold for just over $200,000 on Cars and Bids. And that's a serious bargain for what I would imagine probably delivers a very similar driving experience to a real one. Regardless, it remains one of my favorite vehicles for off-roading that we've ever seen. And while it might never go off-road, it is damn cool to see a Mercedes-Benz with 6 wheels, even if it's not a real 6x6. It wouldn't be a proper list of off-roaders if I didn't include the Toyota 70 Series Land Cruiser, and we're fortunate enough to have sold quite a few of them on Cars and Bids, but this one really stood out. It's a 1986 HJ75 pickup. It started life as a pickup, but it eventually got an extended cab version to add even more practicality. It also had a lot of really great modifications, including a Pro Comp 4-inch suspension lift, an ARB front bumper, side steps, a fold-out awning, everything you would need to take it off-road. It's also powered by the famed 2H 4-liter diesel straight 6, one of the most reliable engines ever made, and it's made it to a 4-speed manual transmission. Now, while this particular truck isn't the crazy 6-wheel lifted ridiculous things that have come before, this is one of the most crazily nicely prepared Land Cruisers we've ever offered. And well, it deserves to be on this list as it's just exactly what you would want out of a Land Cruiser. And it sold very well too, $46,750 in 2023. A lot of money, but it was a seriously nicely prepared Land Cruiser. Just as it wouldn't be a complete list without mentioning a Land Cruiser, you also have to mention a Land Rover, specifically a Defender. And the Defender that I've chosen for this crazy list is something really special. I've chosen this 1998 Defender 110 because although a Defender 110 is a special car in its own right, this one has an interesting piece of Land Rover history under its belt in that it took part in the Camel Trophy. Specifically, it took part in the final Land Rover-dominated Camel Trophy event. Although that event was normally associated with Land Rover, they weren't always used in it. But for 18 years, Land Rover and Camel Trophy were synonymous. And this one was used as the camera car for the final event that would take place in Chile and Argentina. Adding even more to its off-road provenance, it still bears battle scars that it sustained in South America, which is just plain cool. In addition to all of its great factory upgrades for that event, it also has some more modern modifications such as air-locking ARB front and rear differentials, rock sliders, things like that to make it continually very good off-road. Regardless, what makes this truck so crazy is its history. When you see pictures from the 1998 Camel Trophy, they were either taken from within this Defender or it was used to transport the photographers who took those photos. And it makes it just plain cool. And that's why it's one of the craziest Defenders that we have ever sold on Cars and Bids. But we can't talk about Defenders and not talk about the one that I'm standing around. This thing would probably make this list, but it hasn't sold yet on Cars and Bids, so it's not quite ready to do so. But nonetheless, this is a crazy build. It has a ton of modifications to make it something really special. But the most special of them all, without question, is it's LS3 V8 that lives under the hood. It's ridiculous. This truck is so funny. What I love the most about trucks like this, just off-road trucks in general, is their sense of character. This thing is just oozing with it. But it has really serious off-roading equipment. So in addition to its ridiculous engine and automatic transmission, which it's rare that I say that you would want an automatic over a manual, but in a truck like this, that's just what you want. You just want to be able to put it in drive and go do what you want to do with it. You don't have to think about shifting gears. And that's what a lot of these Defender builds have. But it also has some really great equipment. So it has Wilwood brakes, which make a really big difference, because when you add like 450 or so horsepower to a Defender, you want to make sure that you can stop. And so it's really important that it has that, and this one certainly does. And it makes a really big difference. The brakes honestly feel excellent, and it makes me feel a lot more secure using that kind of power. It also has a suspension lift on it, aftermarket wheels. It had a full body off restoration. The underside of this truck is immaculate. It looks positively beautiful, which is exactly what you expect. And then inside, it's got a lot of upgrades too. You know, Alcantara headliner, nice leather seats. It's a nice place. It's a nice place to be. But again, like, what really dominates the experience is that crazy engine. It's so funny, and the whole truck, because it's on these these huge off-roading tires, it's kind of all over the place. But it just has so much character. It's just plain fun. One more time, we'll goose it. But it's just silly, and that's what's so great. It is such a wonderful sense of humor. And yeah, I'm sure you can take it off-road. I can't today. There's nowhere really to drive around off-road here. I've been Rancho Santa Fe driving around, so I really just have tarmac. I can't go, Ford water up to the windshield or anything like that. But it's just fun. It's just fun and cool. It's everything you really want a Defender to be. The owner spared like no expense building this one, and that's really evident in how nice everything is in this thing. I've been fortunate to have spent time in Doug's Defender when he had it. It's a utilitarian vehicle. It's not supposed to be nice, but that's kind of the appeal, is that stuff is not super nice. But in this one, it actually is. It is nice, and you've got this crazy engine to roll around with, and just I've just been smiling the entire time I've been driving this thing. And that, to me, that's a lot of what the Defender is about. Yes, it's very capable off-road, but these days, of course, you can get a lot of off-road capability out of a lot of vehicles. But the Defender just has a character to it that it's just so lovable. It's just so damn lovable, and I am so into this truck. And again, the owner is very confident in it. Offering it with no reserve shows that he really believes in how nice this truck is and its quality. And again, I'm not particularly surprised. This thing is great. It's a laugh. And if you're in the market for a Defender that has even more character than most, well, be hard pressed to find something cooler. How ridiculous. And those are 5 insane off-roaders that have sold on Cars and Bids, and 1 that will. I love off-roaders, and honestly, the crazier the build, the better. We sell a lot of them on Cars and Bids, and I personally am always really excited to see what insane stuff you guys come up with. And if you've been in the market for an insane off-roader yourself, well, you can buy this one on Cars and Bids. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon. Goodbye.